Women, who's ready to win an election? It is time. It is time to do this, and it is great to see you all. And I have a lot of friends and have enjoyed getting to know and work with over the years. And I'll share a couple things. We talked some about the campaign, but also about this issue with Scannon. And again, both myself and actually Senator McLeod was very much involved in trying to get a representative here. And we talked last night, I think, for about an hour on a whole bunch of stuff, but principally on their failure to respond adequately. And it's a concern for all of us that they haven't come forward with some better information. And but this is a great opportunity for us to get together. So let's talk a little bit about that while Mia's on her way, and I'll tell you the House perspective. So the House passed actually 6 separate pieces of legislation, including one this past week, which we're battling to get third reading on tomorrow, which I just left about an hour's worth of research because I've gotten word of an effort they're trying to do to trip us up on third reading on the solar piece of legislation. So we're preparing for that. But basically what you've seen happen in the House and under Democratic leadership, trying to get to a point. One thing to remember, right, when we look at all of these things, whether our state of our schools, granted some are doing well in some areas of the state, but that's not good enough, because whether you're in Charleston or Chester or Greenville or Greeleyville, you'll have access to high quality education in our state. All of our children can learn if given the tools and support to do that. And as governor, I'm going to deliver on that. I'm going to change the corridor of shame to the corridor of innovation. We're going to do that through, one, instead of what our governor wants to do, he wants to arm our teachers, right? I'm going to arm them with better pay, because they deserve it, right? I'm going to make sure they have smaller class sizes, they have support from within their schools, and the professionalism that they deserve to be able to provide the support and educational opportunities to our kids. Healthcare is another issue very, very important to me. I know that our governor can, if he's just simply willing to, with a stroke of his pen, expand healthcare coverage to hundreds of thousands of our citizens who don't have access to it today. And it's important to look at this. It is $2 billion of our money, $2 billion of your tax dollars that ought to come back and work for our citizens here. Instead, it goes to other states to provide health care for citizens in those states. And what kind of fiscal responsibility does that make? What kind of sense does that make at all? Well, none, because instead of what I'll do as governor, with a stroke of my pen, I'm going to deliver that coverage, and we're going to support relationships with physicians and recipients so that they have preventative care. We're going to pay and support preventative measures to keep our citizens healthy. And when we do that, it's going to lower costs. What happens now without that coverage, and these individuals don't have a relationship with a physician, they don't have the preventative care that they need and I believe deserve, and then they show up later when situations get terribly and much worse, terrible and much worse. They show up to an emergency room and it costs 10 times as much. And it's not like that's just free, right? It's not like not getting, that cost gets pushed on to others, it increases healthcare costs overall, increase insurance premiums, and it's wrong for South Carolina. So as governor, I will deliver on expanding access to coverage and make sure that we have those hundreds of thousands covered. And I can do it simply with a stroke of my pen. Not even another cent of taxes will do that, and it will deliver nearly $20 billion in revenue and 40,000 jobs and opportunity for our citizens. So very, very important step in the right direction. With our energy, we ought to be writing our own energy futures. And I know Senator McLeod agrees with me on this. We've worked together for many years. She's been a dear friend, and I'm very grateful for her support and endorsement in this race for governor. We've been colleagues a long time. And she knows, as I do, that we ought to have a say. The people of our state ought to have a say about our own energy future. And in doing that, we need somebody that we can hold account, right? When you see this horrific circumstance brought to you by this Republican majority who failed to take care of our roads, failed to take care of the pension system, failed to take care of so much that's happening around South Carolina. They've owned this state and run it into the ground for the past more than 2 decades. It's now clear that there needs to be change, because these things don't happen overnight, right? They didn't just lose $9 billion, and they didn't just, Republicans gave them a blank check to run that into the grounded. The pension system, we didn't just wake up one day and realize it was, falling apart. Those things don't happen overnight. And it's the failure to lead our state for the past more than 2 decades. So I believe the people ought to have a say. So we're gonna have an independent consumer advocate that's tied to a statewide office holder. And we got together and actually added that to the bill that's pending in the Senate right now that says the Attorney General will appoint a consumer advocate that's responsible for fighting for us all for lower rates. And so in the future, we can know who is responsible, who's accountable to fight for us. But it's more important than that, we're gonna make sure that we have an energy office that is elevated to the governor's office, working directly. I, as governor, will have somebody who's at the energy. There's Senator McLeod. Welcome. Just give her a big hand for all the work. Directly from the Senate to join us, and it's so good to see you. And we may want to tag team some of this stuff together. You want to come join me? I just finished the other stuff, and we can just answer questions and talk about these things. It's so good to see you. We'll start to talk. So we're continuing the discussion on maybe we just sit down.
Yeah.
Because I know there'll be a lot of questions. So where we are and what has been done thus far in responding to this, and remember, you gotta remember this. Every day, $1.2 million is generated just in SCANA's area alone, their service area alone, $1.2 million that they receive, and we get nothing. It is the additional amount that's on your bill every month that you pay. It amounts daily to $1.2 million. SCANA just issued dividend checks to all of their shareholders and all of Wall Street on money that we're paying for nothing. This past week, we got second reading on a major piece of solar legislation that will do, for the first time, drive rates down. Because you know what? When the bill passes, the energy companies make less money because you will have the alternative to pay for lower cost alternatives like solar and use less generated from coal or gas and pay the power company for that utility, that resource. And so in the end, we calculated that at most under, say, Duke's service area, they would lose about 1 to 1.2 million annually, right? It's not hard to make up when the CEO of Duke in North Carolina makes $21.4 million a year. They're finding a way to be a little bit more efficient, to provide a better access to and better quality and lower costs for ratepayers. They can find a way to do that. And certainly when we have in SCANA's area, they're generating $1.2 million a day and really not having to generate any power for that. That's just good to pay on this hole in the ground. And so look, going forward, I do believe that there is a way to fix this. There's a series of bills that pass. One that eliminates for future the Base Load Review Act, not going to be available, which is not what Dominion wants. They need that in order to continue to complete their offer. They have to have that in place. I would like to see it ended and us set what the House proposed, which was an experimental rate. We took the 18% off, and I'll let Senator McLeod talk about the Senate, but it's always a negotiation. But I know this, we can be in a lot better place than we are right now. And I know this, we can empower our people to make decisions that help them lower their own bills. I believe where we need to be in the end is that we all share, and you can see it on your bill. It's called transparency. It's what we all have a right to, I believe, as ratepayers. That you can look and see how much you have to pay for the lines, right? We all have to share in, if there's a storm coming and the lines get knocked down, they've got to have people to go put them back up, and we all share in that cost. So everybody pays a portion for the infrastructure on their bills. Then you pay for generation. If you're paying for gas, coal, solar, and it shows up on your bill, and you know how much it's costing you for that particular generated power. And you can, today, we can have all this today. You can know when you're paying at peak rates, times of the day. So you can reduce usage during certain times to have more power over your energy, and actually be able to lower those bills. This is information that is available right now, and it needs to be put in the hands of consumers, of ratepayers, so that they can have power over their bills and be able to make the kind of decisions that help them, lower costs, be more efficient, pay less to the utilities. They don't want you to have that information because it lets you have more control, lower your costs, and pay less to the utilities. But this is where we need to head. It's where other people around the country are already headed. North Carolina, they've got 4,500 megawatts of solar power. Just a few years ago, I remember when we barely had 4 megawatts, right? They do $1 billion in new investment every year in solar power, have thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. We have now, we're barely at 300 megawatts. We don't even have $1 billion in total investment. But if we pass this bill that is pending in the House tomorrow and it gets to the Senate, it will save 3,000 jobs, which are due to get cut because we're about to hit a cap and solar will be over. And then allow us to expand jobs and have more access to more jobs in that industry and expand investment in the billions. But I know this, that I feel very confident with Senator McLeod in the Senate and the work that we have done, that we can pass legislation that will make us better off than where we are right now. We don't have to live with this, but it's gonna come up to those that are willing to fight the utility infrastructure, the utility influence in the General Assembly and get it done. And I for one, have a lot of confidence in the work that many of you've done over there, but I know it feels like y'all are still working. It started the budget today, is that right? So, anyway, I don't mean to end there, but if there's any questions on that or on that issue, because I know that's important to this meeting. People have a question. I know we don't have, we can just pretend the empty chair here is scanning. Yeah. So we've got an empty chair for scanning, unfortunately, but we can explain what we've done in response to what they've done.
I know with the bill that you proposed about it's gonna allow us to get solar, but not have to not gonna let the companies add any increase the payment that we gotta pay for our electricity. But what's to say that they won't taxes in some other area besides the energy that we're paying for? Is there something in there that's stopping that as well?
There is. There's specific language that says that they cannot cost recover. So say if they lose $50 this month from me because I'm on solar, they can't go to my neighbor and make it up. It used to be that they could. Well, it is now actually that they can do that. Believe me, when we started solar, they made sure it was a zero-lose proposition. If they lost because there were fewer kilowatts generated by their power plants, they had the ability to make up any loss on your neighbor. Completely wrong, not appropriate, doesn't give, the pressure needs to be on them to be more efficient. And this new bill will do that. Now, keep in mind, there are people, you wouldn't believe what we're up against right now to prevent this. But the bill has specific language that says any loss of revenue, any loss of that they suffer as a result of people who are their own, what they call customer generators, they generate their own electricity because they have access to the sun, that they cannot make up that loss. And lost revenue and lost costs and avoided costs, they can't make up anything on those that are not consumer generators. So they have to, would be a loss they have to find a way to absorb, not on others, but through their own either shareholders, profits, which given the profits that have been generated and what we see, we're not asking a whole lot for them to be more efficient.
What's it called, net metering or something?
It is called net metering is what, when we had so why this is important now. Net metering is and actually Sarah, Hummel Rochko, she's forgotten more about this than I'll ever know. So if I get anything wrong, Sarah, you tell me if I get it wrong. Okay, yeah. Sarah is with Solarize SC, and we worked together years back, and truly is an expert in this area, and somebody I depend upon a lot when it comes to policymaking, when it comes to solar power. But the reason that this is needed now, in order to get the door open for solar, keeping in mind we're 15 years behind on our neighboring states, and this being an alternative for our people, to have a lower cost alternative. They got it added with a 2% cap in what is known as net metering, which means the market, the ability to have an exchange. Say you use some power, but then you put power back on the grid. Right now, you don't get a check for the power you generate, you get credit on your bill, okay? There was a cap that could only grow to 2% of the total capacity, which is not a lot. I mean, it's a very modest, just a crack in the door. And they thought we wouldn't get to 2% until 2025. So the deal said we're gonna set a cap at 2%, and we believe under the agreement we'll get there in 2025. Well, guess what? We're hitting it now. Duke Power's hit it, and what that means is the industry's grown. We have 3,000 people that are employed in the industry in South Carolina now, good paying jobs. If we hit that cap, which we have already in the power area, and it will be completed by the end of this year, all of those individuals will lose their jobs. And so my bill, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say my bill, it's not my bill. I'm the primary sponsor, but a lot of other people have been involved in this. A lot of people have helped to move this bill forward. And it will lift the cap off, so there's no cap. It eliminates any subsidy or cost recovery made by utilities. It can no longer do that. It ends that practice. And then it sets a plan for a market rate for solar, so we essentially get a lower cost that, like, other states already have this. Louisiana has it, North Carolina, Georgia, all of these states have some semblance of what I'm talking about. I just want to bring it to our state and our people. And so that's where we need to get in the end. And that's why that cap is so important, and why we've got to get that eliminated this year, or in addition to the 5,600 that were fired at BC Summer, in a moment at noon of that day, all got fired, 5,600 people will lose 3,000 jobs in this industry alone, and it will end an industry in our state.
I was in Home Depot about 3 weeks ago, and to buy some paint stirrers. There was this person that asked me, who provides your electricity? I said, SC&D. Said, okay, SC&D, we would like to evaluate your home for solar panels. I said, okay. I said, what will it cost? Oh, it will lower your light bill. I said, SC&D? Yeah. Well, would you sign as give me your card, and I'll call you if we choose this. And I haven't called them yet. But it was sort of fishy to me. What is that?
Let me tell you, so, and what they were telling you, so there were somebody probably selling the opportunity to you, no question about it. And what they were saying, it is true. I mean, it is, so basically, that's why I think this is so important. And it applies to everybody, right? No matter your income. If you pay a power bill, you can afford solar. And there are a lot of working families out there that are discovering that, getting solar on their homes, because it'll save them 1/3 or more of their power bill. Now, a portion of that savings will go to pay on the lease for the materials, because you don't have to buy all the equipment up front, and there is a lease arrangement. And the reason we're here at this juncture, and why it's SC&G, is that their monopoly made sure they kept control of every kilowatt of power. So, conceivably, if you could go pay for it all yourself, which people have done, if you can lay out the $20K or $17,000 and put it on your roof, you don't have to get SC&G's permission. But if it's a lease arrangement, because somebody else is leasing you the materials, they become a utility and have to be regulated, and so they control that themselves. I think we ought to have, open kind of a little more competition. If you want to lease them, you can do it on your own, and you don't have to have some net metering agreement necessarily that sets a rate in this system we have now. The system we have now got the door open, and it got enough of the industry in here that said, and we thought it would be good, but it would take 2025 for it to get to where it is now. Well, people took full advantage of it, and they understood that that, it's been a big advantage to them, and so what we thought would take till 2025 has come, we've reached that in 2018. So it's something to consider, and everybody should take a look at it, because it could go away pretty soon if we don't get this done. Yes?
What about the Public Service Commission? We're having, and our neighborhood is having a battle right now because Primary Utilities decided to copy SCANA, as you know.
Right.
And we all just got these bills. I live alone for $51.50 a month for our sewer.
I'm familiar, I know a little bit of that.
And Mia's involved in it, and I know that, so I just wondered what, and we're getting nothing but the neighborhood website's going crazy. In fact, I sent Mia, somebody said, I got a stock letter, they are, but anyone who does anything will not only save the neighborhood, but everybody is saying, I will do anything for any candidate who comes out
Right.
and helps. So I just wondered, what can we do? And I checked, and the Public Service Commission unanimously approved that increase.
They did, and I sent them a letter, before they made that decision, asking them to not approve the increase. We are dealing with that still, and I've got a lot of angry, and I mean, rightfully so, got a lot of angry constituents, about Public Utilities and SCE&G. And I know I came in late, I apologize for that. We were in session today because of the budget, but, I know my good friend, Governor Smith here had it all worked out. And before I go any further to address your, question, Francie, as much as I can, let me just say, I don't know what I missed, but I do know this gentleman right here, and he will make an amazing governor. If you don't know him like I know him, one of the reasons that I love him is that his heart is in the right place. He is genuinely concerned about the people of this state. In all of the fights that I was in, and Lord knows I was in a lot of them during my 6 years in the House, he was right there. Sometimes before me, sometimes after me, sometimes with me, always with me. So I just want you all to know that he's been fighting not just for our country, but for women's rights, and not just women's reproductive rights, but women's rights and equity when it comes to women, equity and education, and so many other important issues facing our state. A lot of times we don't get to talk about the critical issues that impact all of us because we get saddled with the SCE&G SCANA debacle, if you want to call it that, the Palmetto Utilities issue, and so many other issues that are, important to us as ratepayers, but not necessarily important to the entire state.
I've been ready as an answer. What you have to do is work for James Smith, vote for James Smith, whenever anybody
Yes, please.
makes these comments. So that's been my answer.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is, what can we do?
That's absolutely true. Now, on the Palmetto Utilities, and you might be able to help me with the Public Service Commission part of it,
Yeah, I know.
because that's where the issue is, in my opinion. I mean, as far as something that we can do, the area where we can do something about it. I don't know what they, how they reach those unanimous decisions, especially, and, my concern was right on the heels of the SCANA, BC summer issue, and learning that we've been paying, what is it,
27%,
18%? Yeah, more for our electric bills and utilities. So those are some of the issues that, there are a few of us who have constituents who are ratepayers. I'm a ratepayer. And I can tell you it's important to all of us, not just the Palmetto Utilities part, but certainly that portion too. We recently, and I don't know if you guys talked about this, but before I need to tell you something about SCANA and SCE&G, but I'll do that in a minute. We dealt with, I think the House passed a bill that said that SCANA can't charge ratepayers anymore, 0%. And the Senate did a compromise bill, which was 5%. The Senate can charge ratepayers 5% more. So I think they've got to work through that in conference committee, but it shouldn't be any more than 5%, right? So we're still not done with that. We had some legislators who felt like, oh, we're not in the business of setting rates, utility rates. That's why we have the PSC. And I'm like, well, if the PSC isn't doing their job,
Right.
then what? We don't get to throw up our hands and say, oh, well, you know, we appointed these people or elected these people, and now that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, we get to kind of sit back and watch. It's not the way I operate. When we dealt with that bill on the floor, I don't, unlike a lot of my colleagues, I don't just talk just to hear myself. So I don't go to the well much, and I don't really stand up a whole lot and ask questions. I read, I listen, and if I have questions, I'll ask them. But during that particular session, I stood up, and my first question was, Senator Massey was at the well, at the podium, saying, talking about this report that we got back from an independent organization that told us, that kind of debunked some of the myths that SCANA was telling us about them going bankrupt if we don't do this. Or, I mean, it's been, if you guys think, I know paying, additional money is not fun, but it's also not fun to have constituents calling you and emailing you saying, you gotta vote for this SCANA Dominion deal or I'll lose my job. Or, you've got to do this, for ratepayers because I want that $1,000 that they promised me. I mean, so they have led an all-out campaign to have our constituents lobby us so that they can seal their deal. And so we had this independent, Senator Massey and some of the leaders in the Senate had this independent study done, if you will, and it said just the opposite. And so that they used that to come up with a compromise of 5%. I don't think it should be any percent, but I didn't have the opportunity to vote on that until after the 5% was already introduced and it had passed. And then Senator Fanning, who had the 0% amendment that would mirror what the House passed, was able to get his amendment up. It wasn't without a struggle though. For discussion and so that we could vote on it. And when we voted on it, of course, that amendment failed. So we ended up with the 5% that we knew we were gonna get because they'd already worked that out before we even voted. That's kind of the way things operate. But when I heard him say, when he talked about when SCANA officials knew and some of the other things that, kind of went against what they've been telling us all along, I stood up and I said, and it was a genuine question, I didn't expect for it to get the kind of reaction that it got, but I said, is anyone going to jail? Because to me, it was that obvious that somebody needed to. And his response was, I'm not sure, but somebody needs to. That was his exact response. So, and all of the SCANA execs and lobbyists were sitting in the gallery. They had Dominion with them. And I called one of the SCANA lobbyists last week and asked if SCANA could come tonight to talk to you ladies, primarily ladies and gentlemen, but I told them that the Democratic women were having something, Richland County Dems, were having something, and I was told initially, oh yeah, and I think it was a genuine response. He was like, yeah, I can come. Or if not, I know we can have somebody there. When is it? He got all the details. So then this weekend, I get another call from my same contact, and he said, I just talked to my supervisor basically, and he said he can't be there, and he's not sure if anybody can come. And I said, hold up, that big old company, and nobody can come and talk to Richland County Democratic women. And he's like, well, I'm not sure about that, let me check. I said, well, you do that, then give me a call back. So he did, and he said, I talked to one of the VPs, and he said that only the chief operating officer of SCANA is allowed to speak for SCANA now, because of all of the issues that that we have going on in terms of the legal issues and the legislative issues. So they think it's best that one person have the authority to speak on their behalf. And that person just happened to be busy tonight. He had a conflict, so he couldn't be here. And I said, okay, so you're telling me that nobody from SCANA can come? And he said, I know how it sounds. I said, no, I don't think you do. So we had that back and forth. It was lighthearted for him because he didn't get to make that decision, and I understand that. But at the same time, I'm not understanding of a company like SCANA who has no problem whatsoever bilking ratepayers for unbelievable amounts while they get golden parachutes and, you know, go off into La La Land or wherever they go with money, and we're stuck with the bill. So I shared that with him, of course. And then I get a call from the VP. And he says, well, you know, we've got this new COO and he wants to be, you know, they've decided that only he can speak for SCANA. And I said, okay. I will let them know that. And guess what? I will speak for SCANA on Monday because I plan to be there. He was like, okay, let me see what I can do. I'm gonna call you back. So he looked into it, and what he could do was send somebody from Dominion. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I told him I don't get a bill from Dominion. So Dominion has no say, as far as I'm concerned, about what has happened so far. They might be able to come and give us a sales pitch about what they want to see happen from this day forward. But even that is not etched in stone yet. So I wasn't comfortable with that because I think it put my constituents at risk of believing this, you know, ideal story that they've created, the storyline that they've created that says, oh, you know, yeah, SCANA might have, you know, we made some missteps, if they even say that. I haven't heard them say that yet. But, you know, your constituents are going to get up to $1,000 back. Well, when some of you get a $15 check back, then what? When some of you get a $0 check back, then what? I'm just not into the empty promises and the sales pitch, because the reality is, when they came and talked to me, as a matter of fact, they came together to talk to me, SCANA and Dominion did, because I requested it. Because I got one set of answers from Dominion, and I got another set of answers from SCANA. My only other question when I stood up that evening and asked, because we were in session until late that night, was, why is it that SCANA is connected only to Dominion when I know for a fact that there are other companies, reputable companies, who want to have an opportunity to, you know, partner with SCANA and undo some of the damage, or at least mitigate some of the harm that's already been caused to ratepayers. I know for a fact that there are other companies out there who want to have that opportunity, but they haven't been given it. SCANA decided very early on, without anybody else's input, the legislatures or anybody else, did you have a say about who they partnered with to merge or whatever this acquisition that's in the works is? We did not have that opportunity. So I get a little frustrated when I get calls and emails from well-intentioned people who are believing what they've been told, that if I don't vote for this deal, they're going to lose their jobs because SCANA's gonna go bankrupt. Well, SCANA didn't come to me on the front end and didn't go to them on the front end. If they were employees, it seems like SCANA kind of left them high and dry as well. So I'm not in the Senate to bail SCANA out. This is their mess that they created, but it impacts all of us. So I'm not going to look at a deal at face value and say, oh, it's a great deal, cause some of my constituents are gonna get up to $1,000 back, and if I have to be totally honest, and you know that I am also upset because they seem to be targeting communities of color and making those promises, and so that's offensive very much to me. So I've had that conversation. I had it with them collectively because, like I said, initially I was getting one thing from SCANA and the other from Dominion. I'm like, how about y'all just come talk to me together, because I need to know what's what. And by the way, I'm gonna have Senator Fanning in here because it's his district, that had the VC summer debate, you know, where he represents Fairfield County. He is the only senator who represents Fairfield County, and he knows the right questions to ask, even if I don't. So, y'all don't mind me, I'm gonna have him sitting right here, and he was. And we went through all of that, and so they couldn't give me the same song and dance, even though I had the COO. He was then able to be there and to talk. So it just kind of burns me up that they didn't at least send somebody who could speak to, I mean, the harm is already done, but tell me what you're going to do to really help the ratepayers, not SCANA, not SCE&G. What is your plan for apologizing, acknowledging, and fixing some of this mess going forward? They owe all of us that. And the fact that they are not here and wanted to send somebody to you who can only give you a sales pitch is equally offensive, so.
Yes, ma'am.
First statement and a question. I'm an New Yorker. I've been here for 4 years, come June. If, and here's the question, if 25% of the state residents were to ascertain these solar panels on their home, what then will SCANA, SCE&G do? What then will they look into to see that now they are definitely going to lose whatever revenues that they set forth in their upcoming budgets? What do you think would happen at that juncture? Second question, what is having the panels, how then will that bring in the electricity into the home? Is it for, because I don't know anything about this, I'm still looking into all of this.
Yes, ma'am.
How would it help the home? Lastly, here's I guess this will be the detrimental one. If there's a storm of some sort, and electricity were to hit those panels, what then become of the panels?
Okay, so all great questions, and I'm gonna take them all, and I believe I can answer them all, but I wanna step back a little bit and look at, I think, what we want to see in South Carolina, right? Number one, lower power bills, right? How do we get down to the cost of energy is lower for all of us than it is right now? I remember, actually, Senator McLeod and I remember, it was not a time too long ago when we had some of the lowest rates in the country, which helped us bring jobs and opportunities here. Because of all of these events, we now have some of the highest rates, and so how do we bring those rates down, and how does solar, and the questions you asked, fit into that? So, the way that the utility companies make money, it is through new power generation and building new plants. They spend money, they make money because they can say we have to get that paid back. And they are, if there's ever a sort of a government sponsored or socialized system, it is a government sanctioned monopoly, right? You have no choice. If you want power, you have to pay SCANA. Other states have freedom of choice. You might have 2 or 3 utilities you can choose from. But in this monopoly, they are a government sanctioned monopoly, and they are guaranteed a 10% rate of return on all the money they spend. So the more money they spend, the more money they make, which doesn't help us. It really doesn't. The whole system isn't built to help us. But the problem you raise, or the issue you raise, is once you start giving the opportunity for lower cost alternatives like solar, that cost less to get in place, that end up paying less to the utilities, they're making less, and how do they reconcile all that? These are good pressures we wanna have happen. Right now, it hadn't existed. But, so there are three levels of kind of things that we can do to help, our bills go down and our rates go down. One is conservation efforts. You know, because of the state we are, particularly in poor and low-income parts of our state, they have some among the highest bills. Because if they're living in a mobile home or in a home that, is not efficient, they're spending a lot of money to cool and heat their homes. Well, I believe, as governor, what I'll do is advance so-called PACE programs that are gonna allow these individuals to have low-interest loans so they can improve their, put in, insulation, make their homes more efficient, new and better windows that will lower their power bills, and a portion of it will pay off the work that helped build them a more efficient home to live in. And that's gonna give them less money. Well, what's gonna happen, I believe, and what has happened in other states, is they, as a company, have to become more efficient. Yeah, their revenues are gonna go down, and you know what's gonna go down as well? The demand for base load. Because what they wanna say, and what they're telling us right now, even right after they failed 2 new nuclear plants, they say, oh, we gotta build a new gas plant. We've gotta go build a whole new gas power plant. Well, you remember when they wanted to do these plants, these nuclear plants, they were saying, oh, they're gonna be rolling brownouts and blackouts if we don't get all this new nuclear, but if we don't get it built, people, the lights are gonna stop cutting on. Well, guess what? The lights are on, and they're gonna stay on, and the way they stay on is not by building more capacity that's gonna cost us more money. It's by being more efficient in our buildings and how we use, and when I was telling you about having the power to control your usage, and being able to turn it down on peak areas, and being able to control the type of power you're buying, if you're getting solar or lower cost alternative, it's costing you less. It's building in those systems that help drive down the purchasing of these higher rate powers, and also telling to the utilities, we're not building any new capacity because we don't need it. We can spend less money than it would take to build a plant to improve the efficiency of all these homes and push off the need for new base load. And so, with that, I think first and foremost, they have to get more efficient. They, as a company, they have to find ways to save within this, whether it's employees or how they operate. Other states, utilities have faced this, and they've done that as well. I think with things like if the lightning strikes and hits your panels, then you have home insurance, hopefully, or something's gonna pay for that type of coverage. That if there is a loss, and there is a question, right? If the panels are owned by SC&G, like the rest of the infrastructure, if something happens to it, they gotta go fix it. If it's on your property and owned by you, it's your obligation to take care of it. And, it would be covered under your homeowner's insurance if there's, a covered event like a hail storm or something that causes damage to those panels. And Sarah, am I getting this right on that?
You are,
Okay.
hail wouldn't normally cover it, and,
Yeah.
just as an example, when we had Hurricane Matthew, there was one system that was damaged at all, and it was because a tree fell on the roof. So there are, yeah, exactly.
And a tree falling on a roof in a hurricane is a covered event.
So, homeowner's insurance, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So typically that's where it would be fixed, and so I think these are the kind of problems we wanna have, right? I want to have those problems that we wanna create because we're spending less money with the utility company, and we have to make sure they're becoming more efficient, and we limit their ability to push those costs on others. And I think the way we do that is we have rate design where we all pay and share the cost. And actually, the truth is, right now, we could have that today, and us all share the cost of these lines, and it would cost less than what you're paying for a non-existent nuclear plant, right? So what we're paying for that, we could, divide less than that. We're already paying for this, but we could make it where it's fair, where everybody pays their fair share, nothing more, nothing less. And then if you are more efficient, your bill's less. And if you do the kind of things that are important, to take care of your family, which we all do, try to be responsible in our household budgets, responsible in our use of power, then you end up paying less. But you're not taking away from anybody, not costing anybody more, and the utilities gotta get better, at, what their costs are.
What is the role of the Public Service Commission in all of this debacle? Who are the members and how those vacancies filled?
I'll start with this. We passed, they're supposed to look out for all of the public interest, and obviously they failed to do that miserably. And they failed to do that because I believe a system that is, corrupt, doesn't serve the people. It was built to make a decision. The building of these plants was in the best interest of SCANA, right? Wasn't in our best interest. We truly never needed 2 new nuclear plants, right? It was built in an interest, because we don't need all that power. They were gonna sell it in all across the country. It's about their position in a market to sell power, not just to South Carolina, it's gonna sell all over the place and have 2 new nuclear facilities that were gonna last for generations and secure their position in a market. It was their interest, not our interest. The PSC needs to do a better job of looking out for our interests as ratepayers. And so the bill that we passed, we made some important changes to it, that I think are gonna help clean it up. One is, we got rid of the good old boy exemption, right? There was a provision that said, if you wanna be a PSC commissioner, you have to have these qualifications and this background. But if we all on the PERC committee that recommends these people, if we all think you're okay, we can ignore all of these requirements, right? It was this good old boy backdoor exemption to all the educational requirements to be a commissioner. So, in the bill we passed, we eliminated that backdoor getting around the educational requirements. So you gotta have experience, you gotta know this, you gotta have some background. We also require now some better and stronger continuing educational requirements. They gotta continue to be educated. We also put in place the same ethical rules that apply to judges, because they act like judges for all of us. Those same rules gotta apply to PSC commissioners, so they can't be, taken out to dinner and taken on their trips to things like they have been able to in the past. We also gave them, with an independent advocate for fighting for consumers, more of a discretionary role and a process where they can say, maybe it's prudent today to make the investment, but as was clearly the case at VC Summer, even if they thought it was prudent in 08 or 09 or whenever it got started, at some point, it sure as heck didn't become prudent to continue to pour money down that pipe. But the rules before said, once you determine it to be prudent, it doesn't matter. Once it is determined at the very beginning that it is prudent, it will always be prudent, no matter what's happening in the universe. And so we gave them more discretion, and we told them, you've gotta look out for the public interest. We told them in the law that the public and the consumer interest, I think, got lifted in terms of the weight that it was given before. And so they can now have more discretion. We also fired all of them, right? We did. So everybody that's there now is gone. Yep, in the bill. And then we have new elections to re-election. So it hadn't happened yet, but the bill that we passed says they're all removed. And then we went through a process of replacing them under these new rules. And so all of those things I think will help have, and these are, my friends, these are things that other states are doing well. Virginia's got a great example of it. North Carolina, not quite as good as Virginia. Louisiana's a good example for renewable energy and how they've incorporated it successfully. So we're not trying to do things that's like nobody's ever done before. But clearly the system that we had failed. It failed in making the fundamental decisions that should have been in our interest, not in the utilities' interest. And so with this new legislation, I believe we can get there, and we can have a better system, and it'll help drive rates down again.
So it's the only commission that gave unanimous approval to.
They're gone. Once the bill becomes law,
Okay.
they're there now, but they didn't.
They did it now, but they couldn't. Because I went to see an inconvenient truth to sequel, and we had a forum at NIC with the head of the geography, the climatology division of geography, and he was saying that 1 week of solar in South Carolina would power the state for an entire year, because we get so much sunshine. He was willing to go on any record saying that.
Well, it is an untapped resource by so many measures. I mean, you could take, I don't know how many, we could have built out an entire solar farm that would generate the equivalent of the VC Summer plant for, 1/10 of the cost that they were spending to do that. So it's kind of a, there's no question that it is a lower cost alternative. It's getting to the point of market where we wanna be, for that other states have. It's gonna help our people, it's gonna provide jobs, it's gonna provide, but it's, what you gotta worry about is all of those folks that are defending the status quo, that have a lot of powerful interest and support behind them and the resources, who will take this opportunity and try to trip it up, try to make it something that it isn't, that try to, and I'll tell you this. Duke, they were gonna do nuclear plants, right? They had a plan to do, under the base load review, they were exploring whether or not to build a new nuclear plant. They spent $545 million trying to decide whether to do it. $545 million to decide whether or not to build a plant. And guess what? They decided no, which was a better decision than clearly what SCANA made. But every bit of that $545 million is gonna be put back into the rates of ratepayers. So they'll make up every penny of that. It's not money that they have lost. It will all be paid for. And so what we wanna do is we wanna have better decisions to make. I don't want a $545 million decision, just deciding no. I think we as the people of our state can decide what the base load needs are with the expertise. It's not hard to do. There are experts that can do that. And we can say, you know what, we're not gonna authorize that type of exploration. We're gonna say, you know what, we're gonna invest in other alternatives. Efficiencies are we don't need another park. We don't need to spend $545 million to make that decision.
And when you are, I'm going to say, when you are elected governor, what will your role be all in this whole tobacco and throwing rocks and wrecking it and building whatever?
Very important. It's so important, because nobody's been doing this, right? For the longest time. I mean, who's responsible for our energy plan? Where do you go in South Carolina state government and say, okay, where is the plan for our energy future and security? Where does that exist? Who's doing it? Well, really not happening by anybody other than these utility interests who are working with the PSC to get what they want. Well, as governor, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna lift, there's a wonderful office called the Energy Office. It was passed by a great female legislator named Harriet Consoling years back. Francis, yeah, give Harriet a hand. She's a wonderful lady. She did a great job. So she created the Energy Office, and there were some bright people in there doing great work to help them decide what the plan is. As governor, I'm gonna elevate that. I'm gonna make them work and report directly to me. Almost say an energy secretary, if you will, responsible. And then we're gonna have an enforceable plan that says this is what our future is, and it's gonna focus on the right thing so that we don't have to so often try to second guess what is brought before the PSC, and that we have an active planned role, and that it really starts ahead before we're making these lines to go build another gas plant and go build something else. We gotta make sure it's good for us, it's good for the people again. And that's what I'll do as governor. And let me say this, the power in this room, I'm telling you right now, we can do these things, we can have these things, but I can't do it without your help. We can win this race. I know it, I see it when I go all across our state and I talk to people. I see a renewed sense of political empowerment, kind of an awakening that came certainly after 2016. But it's not gonna happen without a historic effort. So whatever we thought we did in last election, or whatever, how much work we did then, we need to do 10 times that. And we all need to make sure that if we're going to an event, we know people are there. Some of these have some voter registration forms in their hand, make sure that everybody there is being registered. We need to get together with people in our community and neighbors, and if you can't take a sign and put it up somewhere that in the yard or work where it's appropriate, and help continue to spread the word. It can happen here. It was a 20-point swing when Conor Lamb won in Pennsylvania. I'll take 20 points, but I don't need 20 points to win, right? We can do this. I'm encouraged, and it's not just about, I think Democrats can power, this victory, but I get a lot of support from independents. I get a tremendous amount of support from Republicans. I think there are, across the political spectrum, people are frustrated. They're not happy with their own choices. They see, a government that has failed them as well. They see a government that has been self-serving and, you know, you look at the past 30 years, and one party total absolute power has not served South Carolina well. No question about it. And they own it all. And the opportunities are too great for our people, are too great for our state, whether it be in healthcare or education. And we don't have to be on the bottom of all these lists. We're better than that. We're better than our roads. We're better than how we do in the health of our people, and then the opportunity provided to our young kids coming out of higher ed with crazy amounts of debt. These are the kinds of things that are in place now that just simply don't have to be with the right kind of leadership that's gonna take us in the right direction. Some things I can do quick, like healthcare expansion. And then we'll do a South Carolina plan that's gonna serve our people. And the other way is, you know, other things are gonna take a little longer, but,
Well, as we wrap up, I'll let you ask, but we're gonna wrap up in another 5 minutes, and so, after you speak.
Okay, I was wondering if there's been any push to gain a little transparency in the healthcare field. You know, when you go to the doctor's office, you don't know how much things are gonna cost.
I mean, I think that's a good question, and we certainly need to have, I think people certainly should have a right to understand what
You
their
know, you
bills
talk
are.
about transparency, being able
Yes,
to
ma'am.
lower rates. Well, I think medical rates would be lowered too, if people knew what things cost.
I think there's no question about empowering our people with information so they can make the right decisions for them, and they should know. I haven't, I don't know if you have anything on that, but I think we need to certainly look at it.
Yeah, it's not something that, I don't know that any bills have been introduced that deal with that issue specifically.
Medicaid
But,
rates.
yeah, that's certainly something that we should look into as well. I just hadn't thought about it.
I know they're looking at kind of things prompt pay so that they make sure that, and also making sure that rates that are charged are either within set coverage, you know.
It's just a mess out there in terms of payment for medical care.
Need a big shot, maybe you want to do something.
And one area is the doctor, how you choose your doctor, and you ask those questions.
That's true. I mean, I do think we need to give patients I've had something called I'm named after Lewis Blackman, who was killed anyways by medical negligence, but it gave patients the power to know who's responsible for the care and who to call and things, those kinds of things. We need to think about things that can empower patients to make decisions for themselves, and certainly understanding the cost ought to be something.
That is true. Before we end, I have a question for you all. When Palmetto Utilities first announced that they wanted to seek a rate increase, I think you called me first, Brandy.
Okay.
And I had a town hall at the Richland County Library, in Sand Hills. Unfortunately, Francie couldn't even come, but she was the one who brought it to my attention initially. And it was, I think, by most accounts, it was really helpful because we had people there from Palmetto Utilities. Of course, it was before the rates were actually approved for increase. But it gave the public, it gave my constituents an opportunity to engage, and ask the questions that they ask of us, of the people who were actually trying to get the rate increase. So it's something like that. I mean, now we're beyond that because the rate increase has been approved, but are those opportunities for you all to talk directly with Palmetto Utilities or SCANA? I mean, even after the fact, would those be helpful at all, or would it be like, you know, well, water under the bridge? I mean, I'm trying to understand because SCANA was invited to come tonight, and that ship has sailed, basically, but there are some things that we can still do and we're working to do as a legislature. Would it be helpful to hear directly from those
Yes.
corporations and those organizations? Okay, because I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to schedule another one specifically for Palmetto Utilities to come back.
To let people express their frustration.
And, yeah, I mean, cause I get it, so why shouldn't they get it? And it gives you all an opportunity to really, understand, try to understand and see things from, cause they're gonna lay out this elaborate plan and this is why and, but it did help to kind of answer some of the questions that people have in the community, and I think it's important to give my constituents those opportunities to speak directly with those organizations.
I think you're right about that, but the basic problem is that it's a monopoly. And they can do whatever they want, really. If you need sewer, then what do? There's one company that provides sewer. And so they can do all the talking they want about why this, why that, why that. But then, if you need sewer, and they say it's gonna cost, so much, the PSC says, okay, because we need the sewer. Now, the problem is the monopoly. Now, can anything be done about that? Both with the electric stuff and with the sewer?
I think both of us are in agreement about that. Now, do you think that the PSC, once, that the current commission is over, do you think that will have some bearing once a new commission?
I do think we have, I think a couple
I
things.
think it does.
I think there are two things that you have, right? You can bust up the monopolies and allow